This upcoming month is going to be one of the most active and craziest weather months you will see in a very long time. What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. All right, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. Today is the big day. It's Black Friday. I hope you guys' Thanksgiving was pretty good. And for the number one thing I want to stress right now is if you have travel plans, today is the best day to exercise them if you are in the Midwest and in the Mid-Atlantic. We're going to want to pay attention to this. We have a very powerful snowstorm moving through parts of the United States. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and discuss this, and we're going to go ahead and get started with the NWS and then get to the models and then dive right into it. Here's the situation, ladies and gentlemen. Winter storm warnings are in effect from South Dakota and some isolated spots in Montana all the way to northwest Indiana and even northern Michigan up here. So this is going to be a pretty significant snowstorm that we're seeing. We're mainly seeing 6 to 10 inches according to the NWS in some of the higher areas. For example, let's go ahead and go to the Chicago area. Winter storm warning in effect for you guys right there. 6 to 10 inches of snow, locally higher amounts possible northwest of an Ottawa to Aurora to Waukegan line. Southeast winds gusting to 30 miles per hour. A lot of winds in association with this as well that we're going to want to pay attention to. Let's go ahead and go up to Madison and see what their winter storm warning is for them up there. 6 to 10 inches. Milwaukee is 6 to 10 as well. Let's go ahead and go to the Quad Cities. What is their winter storm warning looking like right here? Winter storm warning, 10 inches, total snow accumulations around 10 inches with up to 14 possible, 25 mile per hour wind gusts. So we have quite a powerful system, potentially over a foot of snow expected for a lot of regions in the Midwest. Also, looking at central Illinois, you're still looking at an excess of snowfall amounts, so you're going to want to pay attention to that. But you're also, if you're in the winter weather advisories and in areas that are in the southern areas of the winter storm watch still in effect, you're going to want to pay attention to that evaporative cooling and that rain-snow line that is expected to develop later tonight, and that is the NWS safety thing right there. But we'll go ahead and get to the forecast models and just get into it and get to the main meat. All right, so here are your forecast models for you guys right here. This is the situation we're dealing with right here. We have snowfall that's already ongoing in parts of the Great Plains. It's expected to move through much of the Midwest tonight going into tomorrow. Let's go ahead and get started. We have the North American model showing you this right here. And I do want to emphasize something very quickly, especially for the areas in the rain snow line like St. Louis, Indianapolis, other areas like that to pay attention to. So let's go ahead and zoom into the Midwest sector of this because this is very important, and I want to go ahead and start off by expressing this. The temperatures in a lot of the lower Midwest and southern Illinois, central Missouri, southern Indiana were actually colder last night than they were originally anticipating by about a couple of degrees. You're probably thinking about that and going, Patrick, if it's a couple degrees colder than it was expected, that doesn't seem like a big deal, right? Wrong. In this instance, every degree matters, and especially when you have cold air damming going on higher up in the atmosphere, what those lower temperatures at the surface do is essentially reduces the amount of evaporative cooling needed for snowfall to start accumulating. So that could mean more snowfall totals for a lot of regions that we're going to want to pay attention to, and let's go ahead and get right into it. So here's what we have for the North American model. Snowfall is expected to start overnight across much of Iowa, Illinois, and Wisconsin. By the time we get to 6 a.m. tomorrow, you're looking at very heavy snow, potentially up to 2 inches per hour in some areas right here across much of the Mississippi Valley, across Peoria area, the Quad Cities, even as far north as Chicago. Before that rain does start to kick in, eventually we're going to have to see just how warm the temperatures do get tomorrow, and if that snowfall continues to persist despite the fact that that snow line does exist, that rain snow line does exist. And we also have to watch where the system's going to go, where it originates, where it develops. and how this will pan out. But you take a quick look at this. It's expected to move through much of the region on Sunday, and then it's supposed to exit by Sunday afternoon going into the evening. And that is the snowstorm for this weekend. We also have another big snowstorm to talk about as well on the 2nd and the 3rd of December that we're going to want to talk about too. We'll give some time to talk about that as well. But there is one thing I did want to go ahead and show with one of the soundings. Here is one of the soundings outside of St. Louis at 6 p.m. tonight. This is the forecasted sounding about 3 hours from the time this video goes out, and it pretty much will probably be around this whole situation when the video you guys see this. So here's what we have for you. This is our area that we need to pay attention to. Yes, the dew point needs to go up quite a bit. That's going to be a situation that happens going into the overnight. But look at this. This red line right here is your temperature. You're looking at about maybe 5 degrees Celsius, negative 5 degrees Celsius, or 5 degrees Celsius below the freezing line, which is about 23 degrees Fahrenheit. That cold air damming, whenever that snowfall does hit, is going to bring evaporative cooling. And based on this recent sounding, it looks like we're going to need a lot less evaporative cooling than what we had needed previously. Before, we were thinking temperatures were going to be around 34, 35 degrees by the time snowfall started. Even some of the local Mets we're thinking as high as 36, but because that 2 degree colder difference, as well as the fact that temperatures in this region aren't going to crack 35 in some areas, you have a lot less evaporative cooling you'll need for snowfall to start accumulating. That could equate to maybe a couple more inches of snow than expected for a lot of regions, and that's something we're going to want to pay attention to. If you're in a winter weather advisory, especially for this winter storm, it's not that, the worst impacts are going to be north of me. To some extent, they will be, but you also need to take this very seriously because of that rain-snow line and the fact that the temperatures were a little bit colder last night and today than anticipated, and that's going to lead to more snowfall in the long run. So maybe forecasts of 2 to 4 inches could potentially be, say, 4 to 6 inches based on the fact that we have less evaporative cooling to work with before snow starts accumulating. If temperatures are at 33 degrees before that evaporative cooling takes place instead of 34 or 35, snowfall is going to start accumulating, especially if it's very heavy, starting pretty quickly, actually, maybe within 15 to 20 minutes in some instances of evaporative cooling. So you're going to want to pay attention to that and see how that goes, ladies and gentlemen. But now let's go ahead and take a look at the snow accumulations for you guys right here. This is for pretty much the entire Midwest region at this current point. Over a foot of snow expected in Rockford, potentially outside Peoria, the Quad Cities, into Des Moines as well. Almost a foot expected for Madison, Milwaukee, Chicago, Indiana as well. But look at where this rain-snow line sets up. It's very borderline in St. Louis. It's somewhat borderline in parts of the Indianapolis area as well. It just really depends on that temperature. And we'll go ahead and show you that temperature as we take a quick gander of the snow system as well. Here's what we got for you guys right here. When the system is expected to start, by the time we get to 0Z, that freezing line dives back down to the south, to southern Illinois. From pretty much what we saw earlier, it's going to dive back down. And then when the snowfall starts, it'll roughly be around 32 degrees in some of these areas right here. And once that evaporative cooling kicks in, you're going to get potentially a little bit below freezing, maybe down to 30 degrees. Almost. You're going to want to pay attention to that and taking a quick gander at this, even going into tomorrow morning. And then by the time we get to the afternoon, you're still around the freezing line, borderline as well. And then you have this kicker right here. There is going to be cold air behind this that could potentially generate more snowfall on the northwestern side of the cyclone that kind of hooks down. So you're going to want to pay attention to that. Temperatures are going to plummet across much of the Midwest and parts of the Great Plains as well. This Arctic blast behind it is also going to be a very big indicator and a very powerful one as well. Looking at temperatures in the single digits by the time we get to early Sunday morning right here, that's going to be the first wave of a pretty significant Arctic blast that we're going to see moving through much of the United States going into all of December, to be brutally honest, at this current point. And then As we go ahead and start talking a little bit more long term, we're going to go ahead and shift over to the GMGDPS right here, mainly just for show as well. We'll also show the GFS as well for comparison, for context. But here's what we have after this snowstorm moves out of the United States around the 30th and the 1st of December. Right here, you have another snow system over here already starting to organize in Colorado and New Mexico. That's going to start getting its act together, and then some of that's going to transfer over here, potentially bring some more snowfall to a lot of regions in the Midwest. But this is looking like it's going to be more of a mid-Atlantic snowstorm in particular. Potentially areas around Washington, D.C. could see snowfall and mixed precipitation, as well as Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York City, and Boston. So a lot of people, potentially up to 50 million people, are going to be impacted by this moving forward. By the time it gets out on the 3rd and the 4th of December right here, you have another Alberta Clipper after that impacting parts of Michigan as well on top of that. So much of the Midwest is really going to be getting hammered in the next few days. So that's what we are dealing with at this current point, according to the GMGDPS. Here's the GFS for context. Right here, by the time we get to around December 1st, you have this Colorado low developing. Some of that starts to get merged with a Gulf low that starts to develop over here in parts of the Gulf region off the coast of Texas and Louisiana, brings pretty significant rainfall to the deep south, as well as some pretty significant snowfall to Missouri, Illinois, Indiana. Even parts of Kentucky could see some snowfall briefly. Same with Ohio, Pennsylvania, and other areas in the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic region. As this system starts to exit, then you have another snow system starting to organize and develop around the 3rd of December for parts of Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan, and even maybe bringing some snowfall into the Chicago area once again. Then as we get to the 5th of December right here, you have another Alberta Clipper moving through parts of Wisconsin and Michigan once again. Another snow system starts to move through. It becomes more so the mountain regions that see some more snowfall, but then you have another low pressure system on the 12th. Keep in mind this is fantasy land at this point, but I'm still going to emphasize this very quickly, where you see some more snowfall across much of the region. And overall, you generally see more of these low pressure systems, more of these troughs, and more of these ridges really start to turn up across much of the United States. So this is the situation we are dealing with across much of the continental U.S. After the 3rd and the 4th, it's going to be more so Alberta Clippers, maybe a couple Colorado lows to pay attention to, but you are overall going to see a pretty active pattern of weather. You're going to see this trough and ridge pattern that really starts to ramp up after the first few days of December. So that's something to pay attention to and keep in mind as well. Taking a quick gander at snow accumulations, let's go ahead and start with the December 3rd system. Very quickly, just to kind of emphasize this, here's what the GFS is showing. GFS mainly staying north of Philly, D.C., and New York and Boston, but bringing a ton of snowfall to the northeastern, especially in the mountain regions as well. Going to the GMGDPS as well, taking a quick gander at that, taking a quick look at this. My goodness, you're still looking at a good 7-8 inches of snow outside of Boston, potentially 4 inches of snow outside New York City. Philadelphia could see some snowfall, but the main accumulating snow will be north of that. Matter of fact, just an example is Bucks County. Bucks County goes from about here to right here. Bucks County could go from pretty much mostly rain to mostly snow at 4 inches on top. That just kind of shows you where that rain-snow line sets up is going to be very, very critical for this moving forward. And then as we get to another situation, potentially the system on December 6th right here, as the system starts to ramp through parts of the Midwest once again on the GMGDPS, taking a quick gander at that, maybe another additional snowfall accumulation of 6 to 10 inches possible, with this impacting once again tens of millions of people from Iowa and Minnesota all the way to Toledo, Ohio. Taking a quick gander to the GFS for some context. Similar situation as well, maybe another 6-inch snowfall at that current point to pay attention to. But the European definitely takes the kicker for the biggest amount of snowfall and the snowfall that that impacts the most people right here. For the European, for this December 1st, for the snow system that happens on December 3rd. It looks like DC gets impacted, parts of Baltimore get impacted, New York City gets some snowfall, but Boston, especially areas in the mountains of Massachusetts and New Hampshire, get the most snow from this. Then the 5th and the 6th come around, and you see more snowfall impacting much of the Chicago area. Look at Lake Michigan right here. Look at western Michigan right here. Do I think we're going to see 2+ feet of snow in the next 10 days? Likely not, but this still emphasizes another threat that is not talked about a lot, and that is lake effect snow. These Alberta clippers are going to generate a lot of lake effect snow because on top of those cold temperatures and those cooler temperatures that we're seeing, we're also seeing very high water anomalies. We're seeing much warmer than average water anomalies across the Great Lakes. That's going to generate a lot more convection than what we were originally anticipating climatologically, and it's really going to hammer areas in New York, Pennsylvania, potentially Ohio. I know a lot of Ohio got lake effect snow for Thanksgiving. Michigan, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, Wisconsin, even in parts of Chicago, parts of Indiana as well. All the entire Great Lakes region is primed for a lot of lake effect snow this year. And then as we get to the rest of the forecast, the European really wants the northeastern United States, the mid-Atlantic, the Appalachians, and especially the Midwest to have a very active December and a very active snow system. And we're going to want to pay attention to that here in the Pat's Path Predictor channel, and we'll keep you updated for that. But once again, today is your travel day. If you have any travel plans, exercise them today and get out before the snow system starts, because by the time it passes, there's going to be a lot of, not necessarily construction, but there's going to be a lot of cleanup. There's going to be potentially some accidents, especially if the snow refreezes in the southern parts of the snowfall. So we'll have to pay attention to that too, but we need to watch these temperatures as well, because looking at how things are going to pan out, you have this cold moving through on the 30th and the 1st of December as well. This is what we have by the morning of December 1st. Single-digit temperatures as far south as Chicago, and even as far south as Peoria could see very close to that. That freezing line as well goes as far south as Atlanta, Georgia, by Monday morning. And then as the system starts to move through, you have another big blast moving through right after that, pushes even further to the south in terms of the extreme cold right here. Single-digit temperatures just north of Indianapolis as well. And then another big blast moves through, and this is for December 7th. Much of Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, single-digit temperatures, barely above that in areas to the south of there. You're going to want to pay attention to it. And then you have another cold spell on top of that. It's day after day after day of Arctic temperatures, polar vortex signatures, and just extreme cold air moving through much of the U.S. Keep in mind, this is, by this point, December 9th. Not all of this is set in stone, but this is a very scary situation, in my opinion, because on top of the cold, you're looking at all these low-pressure systems that are developing. That cold is going to emphasize higher snow totals. You know, the old saying is, the colder the temperature, the more snow potential you have, because that brings drier snow. You don't need as much precipitable water to generate the same amount of snowfall. If it's 30 degrees, your snowfall ratio is probably more closer to 3 to 5 inches of snow per 1 inch of rain. But if it's, say, 15 degrees of Fahrenheit, you're looking at maybe like 20 inches of snow to 1 inch of rain. So you don't need as much precipitable water to generate the same result. And that's going to be very interesting going forward, especially as you start seeing more of this moisture from the Gulf moving through much of the South, much of the Midwest as well, clashing with those cold temperatures. That is generally going to produce a lot of instability, and a very active December pattern is anticipated based on these charts. We also looked at the CFS model yesterday, also emphasizing that as well. And these are all things we're going to need to watch. We're going to need to keep closely considered, and we're going to have to keep you updated here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But my goodness, after today, it's just going to be the start of one of the most active weather patterns you're going to see in a long time, and we'll be covering all of it for you right here. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close the video out right here. Once again, Black Friday. I know you want to go shopping. Exercise your travel day today. but we will keep you updated on the rest of it. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you are new. The goal, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather. If you'd like to help out, hang out, or ask us some questions, once again, feel free to join the Storms United Discord server. The link to that will be in the end screen. I also would be really excited if you guys came on. We had some more people on the Discord server recently, so feel free to join and come and enjoy the fun. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.